Yeah,
Let's get started. Awesome. Welcome to the town hall meeting for January, our first one of the year. Welcome to 2026. These are super casual meetings. If you haven't been before, Virgil's been to a few. We just talk. It's very informal. So whoever wants to go first, don't be shy. Come on down. Don't be shy. I was being serious. Everyone, the first time everyone's always like, "Oh, yeah." Make sure you pull the mic down as well.
and you don't
It's
have to
on.
give your address, just your first name so we know who
Thank
we're
you.
talking to. Thanks.
I'm Alicia Rhodes.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Definitely not shy, so I think I know just about 4 of you. I haven't
Yeah.
met Mr. Granger.
Bay high.
So, I'm coming this morning to bring up what I call the hidden gem, which is MLK Boulevard. I emailed each of you, with the exception of Mr. Hayes, and I will forward it to you.
Okay.
A development plan for that particular corridor of the city. Each of you, with the exception to one, when you were running for your positions, and I talked with you about my visions for Panama City, I brought up MLK Boulevard, and it's something that's very passionate for me as someone who grew up on that particular street, 1332. At that time, it was Cole Boulevard, and right before me and 2 of the others on the commission graduated, it was turned to MLK Boulevard. So as we look at this particular area, it has been one of the forgotten areas of the city. I look at all the other areas that are progressing, and MLK is not. It's just kind of sitting still. So in the development plan that I sent to you, it highlights the Dover Code plan and what the specifics about that particular street, and it highlights the 4 key barriers that we have there, which is lot size and setbacks, parking, below grade lots, as well as stormwater. So those are the 4 things that we need the commission to start looking at on what we can do to start making some progress there on MLK sooner than later. We've had almost 20 years to make action. So the call to action that I would like for you to discuss and look at is the approval of the SPARK plan to adjust the development codes, to establish clear buying processes for entrepreneurs like myself and others that would like to purchase the lots that's along MLK, because I would like to see local businesses, not anyone from outside our community, but actual local minority businesses along MLK, and to initiate a pilot development phase along MLK Boulevard. And that's all I have.
That's it?
That's
Awesome. Okay. Discussion. Let's have some discussion. What do we think?
Did we not pass the Spark plan? Do we still need action on it?
Yeah, I think it was a discussion. It was something I threw out there, just like a starting point, and it never was adopted. I can certainly understand the concern of like adopting a framework and then not knowing all the different use cases of like how things would run through it and be like, oh my gosh, we got an adopted framework, but it doesn't handle all the cases. So I don't know how to handle it.
So you're 6 months in now, like anything that you would change about this draft that you gave us? Based upon what you've learned? So I'm looking at it because Alicia sent it to us.
Well, I think we're gonna have an update of all the unsolicited offers.
Tuesday
Tuesday.
morning, correct.
Okay.
The only thing the only, the significant factor for MLK is obviously FDOT. So, and that's not an impossible hill to climb, but it is a little bit of a hill that we just have to, it just creates additional dynamics because they have different rules and regulations for driveways and stormwater and all that than the city does. And their regulations trump ours, so.
Yes. To add to that, one of the things that Stacy
Roush.
And Michael Fuller and I have chatted about, you're on the email threads that haven't been distributed yet, I don't believe, is the idea of taking the alleyways and grading them in a way. The advantage of those blocks is that it's an old plating and there are alleyways. And those alleyways are unused and some of them are used, but we could reopen them very cheaply and use them for attenuation of stormwater, pushing the water away from FDOT, letting the residents, or it's not residents, but those parcels on MLK buy into, versus having on-site, they buy into a credit system. We keep the alleyways and we attenuate water through them. Yeah.
If I can ask a question to Nevin, this Spark plan that Alan sent us, the only question that I had on it that I never really got a full clarity on, and was, I know we can do discounts for minority and veteran-owned applicants, is there any problem with us doing discounts for Glenwood residents or family ties on purchase of lots? Or if you don't know, then that's fine. I mean,
Well, there's people online, Mr. Zimmerman, if
Yes.
you'll, sorry. Thank you,
Also,
sir.
good morning.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning, Devin Zimmerman. We'll have to refresh what we looked at. Right now, nothing comes to mind that was a real legal issue
Okay.
involved, but we'll review that.
Yeah, what I'd like to see is after Tuesday, we get the update of all the unsolicited offers, is running those unsolicited offers through this framework to see what the outcome would be and if those would help move the properties or not. You know, the goal is to get properties activated, in my opinion, not just sold.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to this framework, you know, although this one's very Glenwood specific. We have vacant lots in St. Andrews, you know, in the same way, and had them for some of them longer than 12 years. And so I would love to see us some type of, let's get the needle moving, because it's nothing but maintenance on the city right now, with no tax dollars, no community benefit, no nothing with it, so.
Anything else to add?
Nope, I look forward to seeing the email, and we'll talk more about it this coming week.
Yeah, I forwarded it to you so we can have another conversation following this up. So part of the, we've been talking about it, and is how we not just throw ideas into the void, but we kind of know what's the next step, or and not to put undue pressure on the staff, but to put some sort of mechanism where we go, yes, there should have been a follow-up here, and yes, we know that idea is progressing versus getting lost in the quicksand. So what would be a timeline that we should reach back out and say, what's the update on
Well,
a month, 2 months?
yeah, I mean, I would say probably like 6 weeks, and kind of in between that. So we'll set up a specific meeting with planning and public works and Mr. Zimmerman's office to get down in the weeds a little bit more, and, you know, maybe by the by the March town hall, we can have a little bit more of a discussion on this.
I do like the idea of recapturing water in the alleyways. This was something that we had kind of looked at up in Ward 3, and it's something that cities use to try to drive development. And I think for those that are here in the room, those that are online, the reason for this is because when you go to start to develop a piece of property, you may find that the state requirements for stormwater has changed. And so now, less of your property that you purchased is actually developable. You have to do something with the stormwater that lands on your property, and that's something that a lot of people, especially if it's their first time getting into development, that it's a huge surprise. You're telling me I can only use half of this property, and then I've got to dig a ditch, or I've got to do something to move all this stormwater? And so the idea that was presented basically says that the city would go in and take that into the alleyways on our own, and then if anybody wants to develop, they can just buy into a credit system that the stormwater is coming off their property into the alleyway. And larger cities have actually used this by putting in cisterns and huge retention ponds in places where they want to see development occur. And then when the developers come in, it's way cheaper just to stroke a check and say, well, we're gonna buy into a portion of this, rather than, hey, we're gonna have to pay an engineer and dig this out and figure all this out ourselves on our specific tiny parcel of the overall development. So I like the idea. I think we should look at it in other areas as well where we want to have more commercial development.
Yeah.
Is this, what the commissioner has mentioned, a part of the proposal that you're bringing to us now? The stormwater piece of
Yeah,
it?
stormwater is addressed, but not in that detail.
Okay,
Yeah, a lot of cities will do, instead of an upfront one-time pay, it'll be almost like a lease where they can continually have maintenance. What I want to avoid is staff putting together a citywide $20 million open the alley. I really want to go, I want the idea to start permeating of policy of we can do this specifically each block as that problem comes up. Stacy and Michael and Jonathan all have research from other cities where they've opened alleyways up. The nice thing about that particular block is it's on the east side of MLK, and you know, your main streets are always in the highest ground. That's when the town's created, that's where they put the first street. They go.
Which
let's do-
block are you referring to?
The
The area where Ms. Rhodes wants to develop?
Correct, yeah.
13th?
13th. It all
Just
shed.
south of the MLK Rec Center.
Yeah, there's a
parking lot.
natural watershed that is behind the MLK Rec Center. So all the water wants to naturally flow away from the DOT road. And so we could, you know, some of the initial stuff I said was it naturally wants to go that direction already. We can attenuate the water all the way back into the watershed from that whole block. That's what I'd like to see is sort of a you know, an incremental approach to getting that block. Because there's multiple lots on that block that need to handle stormwater and it can't go towards DOT or those lots are impossible to build on.
So I think for those in the room and those online that are like, I've never really thought about stormwater before, some of the principles are whenever you develop your property, you can't create off-site adverse impacts. You can't build up your property and push water onto your neighbor's property. You also can't just push it out into the road at such a rate that it can't be effectively attenuated and treated so that it doesn't create, you know, standing water and a hazard for the road. So whenever you develop a property and you take something from, say, you know, a pervious surface and make it impervious, you just got to think about, you know, again, not creating any off-site adverse impacts. So
Any questions you have for us?
The only other issue.
you do need to go to the mic, just for the people online. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, fine.
The only other issue that needs to be addressed is parking. So the city would need to look at something similar to downtown because parking would be limited to any business that's put along MLK. We don't have the land capacity to meet the current codes for parking at each lot parcel. So just as I stroll
That
down.
one's actually easier. We have the ability to grant variances for our parking. Yep.
Yeah, and I would even argue that, you know, that Main Street is a lot less like our traditional downtown and more like Lynn Havens, where the neighborhood is on the downtown. If you think about our downtown, probably in the 20s, the state attorney's office was single-family homes. And so we've kind of pushed out, in downtown, we've pushed out single-family homes, and so that's a true neighborhood. So I think we can change those rules, but I think we should be looking at it like, how do we stick in parking? Should we take this road and make it one way in this
Yeah.
block to add 4 spots here? How do we use our existing city parking at night when it's not being used at the, you know,
The Glenwood Community
Glenwood
Center.
Community Center? Yep, those sort of places who have parking already, how do we use those, you know, symbiotically? So I'm definitely in favor of that approach.
Because that is another potential unintended consequence. If there's not an area for people to park, they'll start parking in the neighborhoods, and then we'll hear about that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, people are parking in front of my house to, you know, walk a block back for business, and so.
Yep.
Yeah, and the MLK Rec Center parking, as an option, probably would be limited if that center is going to be as active as we are planning for it to be. So we do need to have a more specific parking plan. At one time, we talked, an idea was about alleyways. Well, if we're looking seriously at stormwater and alleyways, then that still creates a parking situation for us. And as this addresses the entire MLK Boulevard, we would need to look at that throughout, because there are other areas that also have the stormwater issues. And there's a lot of those green spaces have looked at. It's like, oh, those are vacant properties, we can just build on them. Well, when you look at them, yes, you go, oh, there's water under there. It's a part of a tributary system, so.
So as a reminder, we are in the process of purchasing that property at the northeast corner of the MLK Rec Center, which is the southeast corner of northwest corner of the southeast corner. And our
The
goal.
corner of MLK and 15th Street by
Yeah,
the center?
That is correct. But it is the
those who
northwest,
are-
it's the northwest corner of the property, southeast corner of the intersection. And we would probably turn that into parking. I think that makes the most sense right there, because I do agree with Commissioner Lucas. I think parking is gonna be in high demand there, and so we wanna make sure we have plenty of parking.
It's like the most complicated way to say that.
I know.
Yeah,
Well, because also there's other parcels we wanna buy around there too.
the lot across from the AMI.
There you go. But there's 2 lots across from the AMI.
Yeah, but the one on the corner, there's only one corner lot.
So the model could be alleyways attenuating water, but also being potentially one-way, serving as parallel parking or some sort of less organized. I mean, if we attenuate water down the alleys, they're gonna be permeable gravel type of a thing. You won't really be able to put lines in them. But you
No.
could do some sort of parallel parking with some signs and that sort of thing, and fit 5 or 6 cars here and 4 or 5 cars here, and
I mean, you could conceivably kind of come in and put up like some type of ribbon curb or something to kind of indicate, hey, just on one side.
Yeah.
You know, and what that would help do is that would prevent, you could keep it gravel, but you have a ribbon curb on each side, it would indicate, it would keep the gravel from being washed out, and then potentially, you know, indicate where you're supposed to park your wheels, just to get people out of the middle of the road.
yep, I just want to avoid cathedral programs that we can't launch and will take 10 years to do it, while we have people who are like ready right now. So whatever that approach is, incrementally, getting better and better, and solving problems as they arise, not predicting too many problems
Yeah.
beforehand. That's my goal.
And
Well,
here's
thanks
the-
for working with the mayor to bring this to us, because this is exactly what we need along MLK.
Thank you. And the final thing is to look at the codes to make sure that the properties or the examples that Dover Code actually gave can be done actually in Glenwood. So the setbacks right now do not accommodate those type of buildings to come there. So I gave an example of one of them that's actually in the Dover Code plan. And if I was to build that today, it's not possible with the current codes that are for the area. So how can we move towards that? It's by adopting whatever adjustments need to be made.
Yeah, That's a really good point. You know, we've got all these illustrations, but once you lay over stormwater and parking stuff, you can't really do the plan that we've illustrated. So maybe we could create some exemption if it follows that, that plan for both of those items. So anyway, that's just something to think about.
Cool. Who's next? Yes, ma'am.
I'll go ahead and go next.
You're here bright and early.
Piggybacking off of Good morning, Michelle Bryant. First, I'll just say, whoever brought the biscuits, thank you. I was rushing. Thank you, Jonathan. You're my new best friend.
Awesome.
I didn't stop and get breakfast this morning, and as you guys know, I love food. Okay, so piggybacking off of Alicia, and I think I'm piggybacking off of her, one of the things I wanted to talk about today was the business development along MLK Boulevard, specifically the Spark program. I believe it's an excellent plan to spark some type of development along MLK, but it seems as though it kind of went stale. Working with Jonathan and trying to work with outside developers within the city and outside of the city with the property that the American Legion Post 424 was looking at, we've run into those challenges, and I'm going to assume some of the same challenges that Alicia has run into in regards to stormwater, parking, and issues like that. So what I wanted to bring forth is there an opportunity for those who have submitted RFPs or submitted unsolicited bids to meet, and let's kind of get together and see how do we frame that out, right? How do we frame out getting those properties and those lots to a place where they are buildable, right? There may be cases where some aren't, but there may be some cases where some are. And that's where you can build that framework for future use for the Spark program and or development in Glenwood or any area when it comes to those particular issues. My other issue or question here is about the artifacts. We are pushing year 4, actually year 7 when you add in the storm, where the artifacts from the African American Center were placed into A.D. Harris. We were noted that Rosenwald took the artifacts that belonged to their school or they wanted to keep at their school, but my question and concern as we enter into the next Black History Month is, what is the status on those that were left behind? In addition, were there ever any connection or reach out to those family members who had their artifacts destroyed or were destroyed from Hurricane Michael? Glenwood Revitalization had came forth back in 2023 to look into being able to get those put on display. 2 directors ago for Quality of Life, Parks, Rec, and Culture had talked about getting those items inventory, and I believe they were, and then put in a safe space until there was a location to house them for the citizens, the city, outsiders, or whomever to come and view those. So I'd like an update on that. Sorry, Jonathan, I haven't had a chance to email you, but I did find the addresses of the 2 businesses. 2 is on 11th Street, 1 is on Jinx Avenue, where they are indeed metal buildings, and they actually did get their permits. I'll have the addresses and I'll email them to you.
Thank you.
The last thing that I have here is Any update on the Glenwood Marketplace, specifically the Sankofa deal? I know they may have just been saying as a part of their presentation, but what was said was that they could potentially start breaking ground in December, and just wanted an update on that. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, let's do it. Where do you want to start? There's a
Well,
lot of questions in there.
The update on the Glenwood Marketplace, they're in their due diligence period, and so they have run into some of the issues we've already talked about with stormwater. They're at the intersection of two major roadways that are not in our jurisdiction, and so they're working with our engineering staff on that, and also on acquiring additional properties to expand the footprint.
But it is, I mean, I text, the Pedro probably at least once or twice a month. We have check-ins, but the commissioner's spot on. I mean, he's doing additional property acquisition and, kind of in the negotiation phase with that. And then both his engineers and our engineers have come up with, and we have significantly reduced the amount of stormwater attenuation that he has to do, but there's still pretty high bar because, to the commissioner's point, he's literally at the edge of two state roads right there between 98 and 77. As far as the artifacts, I mean, I'll have to follow back up, but my understanding from the prior PCR director was that those, Commissioner, I thought those were secured.
They have been inventoried and secured.
If that's changed, that would be news to me, so I
Yeah.
think that's where we are.
In terms of reaching back out to the families, to my knowledge, that has not happened as
I'll
we've
follow
moved
up with that.
forward, right, with the plan.
So there was that. There's a whole bunch of questions. The program, yes, being stale. What I'm hoping, the Spark program getting stale, correct. Next commission meeting, Jonathan's giving us an update on the 22 unsolicited offers. 24. There's a bunch of
It
them.
was a bunch of them.
Offers. I
Some
don't
of
think.
them dating back 5 years.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're going to solve all those right then in that meeting. We
Yeah.
might just say time to go to a workshop, and that might be a 2-hour workshop of just.
But isn't there a time limit? If the proposal is put out and we don't respond within a certain time, it's moot?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Well, I think legally speaking,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, from a contractual standpoint,
Yeah.
I'm not an attorney, but we have one present.
Do they expire? Nathan?
But yeah, I think from just a general contract perspective, I mean, you can't expect anybody to leave it open.
Well, and even unsolicited offer is not an actual, like,
Yeah.
it's a non-binding, so
Yeah.
it's just, hey, let's start a conversation. So I think I'd love to, going back 5 years, do we want to restart those conversations? They may not be interested anymore. That person being someone who submitted 5 years ago, but we can certainly restart the conversation.
Yeah, I think we should do that. And anything over 2 years, if the people are interested, they need to, either we need to come up with what our solicited offer process is, and then just notify them that they should come under what our new procedure is, if they're still interested. That way, I think we have a fair approach if we're starting afresh. What's your thought on that, guys?
I think that's a great idea. I think we need to keep mindful that in order for it to be a fair approach, we can't continuously bog down the process. I know that's just part of the nature of collective, decision making. But if we are truly going to be open to doing P3s with companies or solicitations from folks wanting to buy or what have you, that we need to decide if we're going to do that or not do that fairly quickly, and then work with them. Because what I'm starting to kind of see is that we're having mixed results with that. That's all.
What I would suggest is, I think that's a great timeline to kind of put in there, but as long as everyone gets contacted, because there were some on that list when Jonathan reached out that never got responses from anybody.
That predate me.
That predated Jonathan, yes,
We're not
very
fussing
true.
with Jonathan.
And so just out
Yeah,
of,
the majority of the list
just-
predates all of us.
Yeah.
just out of respect, whether or not I think the idea is a good one or not, I think that they should be contacted and told, hey, this is the process for you to reengage, so that there's kind of this new leaf that's turned on, hey, you're not just gonna fall into the vortex of City Hall and no one ever hear from you.
Momentum of an idea in this organization is very hard, and that's why and even the initial Spark program that I kind of threw together was something that a consultant would do and present, and that's why oftentimes in cities there's so many plans that never happen, because The plan is just the like, hey, here's the idea, and now has to be implemented and carried forward by staff and elected officials through people's campaigns, through different
Oh, yeah.
transitions of staff, and it's tough. But what I'm hoping to see is conversation on Tuesday, workshop very soon after that, and start seeing more ongoing conversations where people who have the offer in know what the next step is. Because I don't even know, like, people thought, like, what's the next step? And I'm like, I
I
don't know.
don't know.
So, yeah. Any other questions related to Michelle's comments?
No, I just would add, I think there's, as we kind of start thinking through this, I mean, I think one of my recommendations would be for y'all to direct staff to, you know, kind of reach back out to these folks and kind of freshen them up and kind of see where they are. I will say, you know, I'm all about establishing some type of framework. We haven't officially done that. We had a workshop and we discussed it, but there's not been an official policy. So we kind of look at them one-on-one as they come in. And I think, you know, what I want to be careful is that, you know, that staff, and because perception is reality at times. And so, you know, I want to be careful that it doesn't appear that staff is kind of, you know, pushing some forward and intentionally holding some back. It is helpful, though, if you've got one of the commissioners or the mayor that's excited about something to kind of advocate for that based on the needs or excitement that you know exist in your particular ward for a project. So, I mean, I think that's always helpful. But I do want to, you know, I want to differentiate between more the kind of the P3 and commercial or retail aspect as different from just the multitude of these infill lots that we have. I think to me those are kind of two separate things. We've, you know, as you know, and that's another master list that the logistics team is working on, building up all of the parcels that we own. You know, you have some of these unsolicited offers, you know, along 77, along 98 that have more of a commercial or retail Beck Avenue feel to them. But then you've got a lot of these just random, you know, infill lots, you know, half acre, third acre, fourth acre, kind of in around our neighborhoods in all 4 wards, where folks just want to come in and just build single family homes. And I think, you know, I think that's going to be helpful with the, you know, with the 3 contracts we have with the realtors to alphabetically rotate through selling these parcels, but identifying that. So,
But I also think that when we're talking about infill lots, that we could have more directive than being reactive.
correct.
Because we know what the zoning is for those parcels, we know what can be built there. And to be direct, if our part of, if it's affordable housing, for instance, if the city portion of affordable housing is the land, do we need a realtor for that particular project? To be a part of the, getting the infill lot developed. So I think there's a posture that we can take as the city to be a little more directive, but with the intention of making it easier for people to acquire these lots and for them to be turned from, you know, lots to be mowed to tax return to the city. So that's one category of properties. Another category, I think we should be a little more directive so that we're just not reacting
Right.
to every idea that someone has. Because if they know the parameters, that helps them shape their offer, and it saves our time for our staff.
Do we answer all your questions? Perfect. Anyone else? Next person. Yes, ma'am. Come on down.
Hey,
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Lindsay Beasley. My husband and I own Panhandle Patio. We are at the corner of Drummond Avenue and 23rd Street. Because I have some questions and it may sound like a little bit of a complaint, I want to start with a compliment. 2 of them, actually. My home is in the Kings Point neighborhood, and whoever was in charge of communicating about the streets, the sewer, the water, did a phenomenal job. I got communication about that project in the mail, online. I knew exactly when my street was going to be a mess. It was awesome. So kudos to that person. Also Stacy with Public Works, I've spoken to a couple of times this week, and she's one of the most sincere people I've ever spoken to. So love her too. Those are my compliments. Now that I have experienced some of the city's infrastructure work near my home, I'm experiencing it near my business. And this is not a complaint about the work. I will be a cheerleader for the city, love the infrastructure improvements. My concern, so with all of that said, like we've had our building shaking for months, we've had dirty cars, we've experienced it all, and I have nothing to say about that other than I'm excited. My complaint is the communication about how the construction has moved. I have called City Hall a couple times over the last couple months, because you can tell, when construction's moving, when it looks like, oh, it's getting a little closer to us, this might impact me. The phone has always been answered, and they're very nice, and I have been told, hey, let me have the project manager reach out to you. Never happened. I should have continued to follow up on that. And then this following Tuesday, I called again because I see that machinery moving towards our retail business, and called again, no phone call back, sent an email. No communication until CBC Construction walked in, and I know my time's going, walked in and said, hey, today we're moving these water pipes and we're really going to try to have a driveway here for you, but it may be through the grass. It's going to be a task. And if you have ever owned a small business, a retail business, it is hard. By no means do you want machinery blocking your driveway, or any way for a person to get into your business. I'm also a person of preparation. So had someone said, hey, Lindsay, in a month, in 2 weeks, in 6 months, you may need to get a banner up. You may need to fly some balloons. This work's happening. Here's some time to prepare. Goodness gracious, that would have been amazing. So that's my complaint. My suggestion is somebody needs to get ahead of that, especially for business owners. I know residents would appreciate it too, but business owners, I could have prepared a lot better than the day of. So I appreciate it.
Totally. Yeah, and I mentioned on Facebook, it's happened to me too.
Yeah.
A lot of times, even my house, I came around the corner, I'm like, the road's gone. And a lot of the issues from what I've seen are not necessarily, it's like we've directed the contractor to do something, and then one of their subcontractors goes and does something, and we're like, wait, what happened? The roads in the cove got removed for like 2 years, and they just sat there. And even sometimes, sometimes the contractors are amazingly flexible and great. And I don't know how cities work with contractors to say like, hey, here's our kit of how we communicate, and we want to know these steps. Is there a way that other cities do that to prep their contractors to ensure that they're getting us the information? Because then there's like Venetian Village, which is like hitting utilities that are not on maps, causing delays. But is there like a best practice of, hey vendor, here's how you can best help us that we can help the citizen?
I would say put it in the contract like an SLA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like similar to IT contracts where you're required to do certain things at certain times.
Yeah.
I would say we'd probably look at that. But my question is it the 23rd Street or is it?
So we're actually impacted by both, because I know there must be some work coming up with 23rd Street because we've had a lot of surveyors on the property. That's not really my issue today because I imagine that's down the road. We've spoken to them. And I also should mention, I don't own this property. We lease it. And so we've reached out to our landlord several times and said, hey, did you receive communication? So if that has happened and he just didn't get it to me, y'all can stop me and I'm happy to be, to sit back down. But to his knowledge, he didn't have any about when the work would reach our building. So that's really my biggest thing is I think I thought of two suggestions. And one would be, I know that the construction contractors, they have a task and they seem like they're really getting it done. But when it comes to a business and a business that wants cars to pull into it, they could probably be, have a little sit down and say, hey, let's park that excavator towards the back. Let's not block the driveway. Let's take our break behind the business, and those are just decorum things that would help people pull in and maybe buy some patio furniture. And the second is to have someone designated to get ahead of the problem, ahead of this. Because like I said, Stacy was helpful. She grabbed a banner. She had that was amazing. But that's really not her job. You know, I could have done it. I could have prepared my business even a week. I would have loved a month, but a week would have been helpful too. So I didn't just walk in and say, wow, this is how my day or week is going to go, you know.
But this is from the construction on Drummond?
This
Yes.
is A2.
Yep.
So,
So-
we do have some communication challenges, and we're working to make some changes specifically with A2, so I do apologize for that. But to the mayor's point, yeah, we do have subcontractors specifically downtown where they were supposed to stop, and they just turned the corner demoing, and before you knew it, half the block was gone.
Yeah.
And our CEI, which is Construction Engineering Inspection, like, I mean, it doesn't take that long to tear up a road. And so, you know,
Takes
they.
longer to fix it.
Yeah, takes a lot longer to fix
Yeah.
it. And so, you know, they were looking at a different project for like 45 minutes, and they came back and like, what the heck are y'all doing? Like, this was not supposed to happen for a couple of weeks. A lot of times too, not necessarily while we're doing new stuff like we did in your neighborhood, that we weren't replacing anything, we were adding water and sewer. But, you know, in other areas where you're rebuilding it, a lot of times, number one, we find stuff in the ground that wasn't there. And then two, we're dealing with this downtown, because of what was in the ground was different than what we thought, we have to kind of pause and kind of re-engineer it or field engineer it. To make upgrades, and that can take, you know, those that have an engineering construction background, that can take 3 or 4 weeks sometimes, depending on the project. But I do recognize some of the communication challenges as we've gotten closer to Michigan Avenue, and we're working on that. And as the Assistant Director of Public Works, it is Stacy's job. Anything that the Public Works Department needs to do, she's willing to step in and do
Okay.
it. So.
And when I spoke to her last, she did say that the project manager would be sending me a document on, you know, I know that timelines can change, but the proposed timeline
Right.
and where things are moving next. So I would still appreciate that if it exists or could be sent to
To
me.
your point, Mayor, about what others are doing, I'm sorry. She's given us an example of where it did work well. And so let's look at what the procedures were for that. And if there are, you know, if that was just happenstance, or is that something that was codified, that was followed in residential, but maybe not in business. But thank you for letting us know that it is working, or has worked at
Yeah,
some
we
point.
want our vendors to arm our staff with the information they need to be able to reach out like that. And so it needs to be in the contract, it needs to be where all the it needs to somehow matriculate from the contract all the way into the hands of the subcontractors to where they're all, and not that we'll ever be perfect, but we can 100% be better, because it's happened to me and we acknowledge that. And
Yeah.
I don't know, so I think you're hearing, we all wanted to see steps to make it better to avoid this.
Yeah. All I will, oh, go ahead, sir.
If I could just,
So what I was thinking
so,
is,
so
Spit it out, Josh.
both of those projects, I happen to be in them, and the difference between the two are very, very clear. It doesn't have anything to do with the work. It has everything to do with people went in Lindsay's neighborhood with written letters, door to door, letting them know. We also had consistent email communication updates on that. I still haven't gotten one in the last 2 months on A2. So I don't know what's falling through the cracks on those email updates, but that would be helpful. Because Lindsay's not alone. So she reached out on Facebook, and that's how I found about her
Well, I
issue.
did reach out a couple ways before that, just to be clear.
Okay.
I'm not going directly to Facebook to blast anybody, but I reached out to
Yeah,
City
you
Hall
did.
and
You reached out inside City Hall. But there's a bunch of residents that are right beside you too, that also experienced the exact same thing you did, with a knock on the door saying, hey, we're gonna have to direct traffic on Michigan Avenue through your yard today. And so I got phone calls on that, like, just about 2 days ago. And I think, you know, hindsight's 20/20, but there are some very specific things that they were not part of when we did the kickoff meeting. They didn't get the written flyers when we did the kickoff meeting, because they were up at 23rd Street. And I guess that they just got missed from that standpoint. But what worked well in Kings Point, and Jonathan knows how challenging Kings Point was. There were a lot of opinions, as you know. But that door-to-door written communication is the only thing that's cutting through in any of these project areas. And so, and those email updates are vital. And I don't know what's what's happening with those pieces, but I watched what happened downtown. I got one probably once a week with downtown, but you're not getting that in these residential neighborhoods. I've gotten more from F2 than I have from F1, or from A2. And so anyway, that's just my feedback, written, door to door, and the email updates are vital to making sure that this doesn't happen, because it allows them to have a mechanism to communicate back.
Well, and even back to the part downtown, which if Laverne Avenue, which affects Save the Closet and the boxing gym, the GCUC, is that correct?
Correct. Well, they're the prime contractor. They're not the sub that got a little excited.
So whoever is doing the current construction, what I really appreciate them doing is every day they're not keeping the road shut down. They actually grade it back and reopen it. Now it's dirt and it's asphalt millings everywhere, but people get to use the road when they're not using it, and it's probably a whole lot easier for them just to shut it down for 2 months. But we all appreciate the flexibility that they're bringing in that 1 or 2 block, 3 block area, trying to keep traffic flowing, and as third world as it looks with gravel and dirt roads and no curbs, what's appreciated. So
Well, it sounds like, what probably actionable thing out of this is that, especially when projects deal with commercial, because residential seems to be fairly straightforward, where it's, you got a driveway or you don't have a driveway, right? Like it's, or you have a road connection or you don't have a road connection. Whereas commercial, it's multiple different driveways, different parking lots, you know, there's a little bit more fidelity there, I think, with the commercial side. But either way, build that into the contracts moving forward so that we have like actual, hey, when you're going to do certain actions, that those are communicated ahead of time, either to the city or to the folks of that area, right? But also kickoff meetings for construction, right? Kickoff meetings, we've been doing those. And I think going all in on, hey, the door hangers, like have a door hanger for every single business. This is what we're looking to do. The timeline obviously is flexible anytime you do anything with construction, but here's how you get in touch with us, right? I think we've been doing that. I think it just needs to be more consistent. I think that would be helpful. Obviously, we're never going to hit the mark 100% because there's just too many companies and people involved. But I think communication is what you're asking for.
It is,
Yeah.
exactly. Was there a kickoff meeting for that?
There
We had a
was, but you
kickoff.
guys didn't get invited to
Okay,
it.
because I
And
did,
that's
I
why.
attended the Kings Point meetings.
Well,
So,
your landlord probably got invited, and this is one thing we've realized. If you go to the property appraiser's website, we're gonna mail it to the owner. And
Yeah.
let's say the owner maybe has a different mailing address than the property.
right.
Like I have a
Yeah,
rental
which
house.
is why I did
P.O.
reach
box.
out to
Yeah,
him
or a
and
P.O.
say,
box.
I mean, maybe he, and this is what I'm saying is like, I did reach out to him. So if there was this overabundance of communication, I would happily sit down. I don't think that was
No,
the case.
no.
But if he was invited to the meeting, yes, I would have appreciated that be passed on. to him.
Or if we go on there and we mail it to the homeowner, or to the
Mm-hmm.
actual owner of the building, and it comes to your address, if you get a letter addressed to the actual landlord, I'm
Right.
assuming you wouldn't open it.
That's right.
And so that's where
I
that's
did
why,
research.
to Commissioner Granger's point, that's why really the door hangers are the best, because they're gonna be
Yeah.
intended for, even if it's a renter,
Yeah.
you know, the person who lives there, because it's gonna be much more, but then
The
again,
one who will be
yeah, staff
displaced.
takes it, throws it in the trash.
the,
Opening the building.
yeah, the homeowner, you know, I mean, the homeowner has a right to know, the physical owner has a right, so
Yeah.
that's why the door hangers, I think, are really good. I do
Yeah.
believe, though, we mailed a couple hundred homes, though, Commissioner Street, at the beginning
I
of
think
A2.
no one realized that Lindsay and them don't have a driveway on 23rd Street.
Yeah.
That's their challenge.
That
It's
that is
different
the
than
vibe that I
everybody.
got on
Yeah,
Tuesday.
and
But your
just to be,
address is
yeah.
23rd Street, right?
The address is 23rd Street, the driveway's Drummond.
Just to be
Bummer.
clear, though, anything that happens on 23rd Street is going to be the state
Yeah.
and not the city. We don't have anything going on 23rd Street.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
Yeah.
hear it.
Thank you
Yeah.
guys. I appreciate it.
absolutely.
No,
Thank you.
no, I don't hear anything.
I don't hear that buzzing.
Alan's the only one that hears it.
No.
Wait.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting it's my brother. I'll
Answer
call him
your
back
phone. I'm
later.
like,
He
what
knows
is
I have a.
vibrating on this table.
Do we need to
Like,
call
is
a
there
doctor?
ball?
Yeah.
Somebody looking under the dust for.
We decided to all make our phones ring at different times just to
Golly.
mess with you.
Yeah. Awesome.
Is the buzzer in the room with us, right?
I know.
The other thing,
right.
the other thing with A2 is, and you remember this, Commissioner Street, we actually significantly expanded the footprint and scope of
That's
that
what
project.
that was the other thing
which
happened.
is extremely disruptive. In fact, whenever we have these kickoff meetings, myself and the particular commissioner for that ward, we always lead with, "You're welcome, but we're sorry." Because it's going to be crazy for 18 months, because we're literally going in and rebuilding an active living neighborhood, like from scratch, which is normally something you would do on the front end, and then when you're done, people move in. But you know, when you go in and you rip up roads, and while there were a lot of challenges in the Kings Point residential neighborhood, the scope of that project was far less disruptive because we just were adding water and sewer. We weren't redoing roads and curbs and stormwater and all that, which we are doing in these neighborhoods. So.
Yes, sir. Come on down.
Good morning, Virgil Marshall. A word of thanks for a quick response and call to actions for the safety concerns with citizens being struck by vehicles crossing 15th Street, Highway 98 on the Hill. Addressed in the town hall on December the 6th. Within days, we had emails informing us of progress and the dates of future meetings addressing the concerns of public safety. Once again, thank you all for recognizing the value of a human life and putting things in place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like those kind of comments.
I'll just say, Virgil, don't stop pushing.
Yeah.
Because we're pushing an 800
It's gonna
pound
take a while.
gorilla
It's gonna take a while.
up the uphill, and getting FDOT. Yeah, it is. That's what we're doing.
So also just an update on Shirley. She is out of rehab and still has a long way to go, but was able to attend the Maybelle Whitfield Way unveiling of the road.
Awesome.
Nobody else is allowed to speak unless you first eat a donut, because we've got a lot of extra donuts over there. So.
Who's next? Anyone
Come on,
else?
Fontaine.
I'm just here to listen, but thank you for the opportunity. I do have some stories to tell.
Oh, no.
Good morning. I was the last one here, so I'm going to let everybody else speak. Derek Thomas, 1100 West 10th Street. Today I was on my way here, and apparently my suggestions for making mulch and stabilizing the soil in the Garden Club Park was not taken. They went in there with heavy machinery to move away all the piles, and since the dirt is wet, that made lots of little ruts and stuff. It's a shame. I brought up the same thing with Lake Caroline before they went in there, and all of the ducks left and went to the Garden Club and were totally gone out of the area around the drainage lakes for over a year. And my comments were changed into wood chips grow plants. Wood chips stabilize the soil, trap nitrogen, slow runoff, and if you want to operate heavy machinery there after the next hurricane, you need to stabilize the soil. Right next to it, on the other side of the property line, they hauled out hundreds of truckloads of topsoil instead of moving it over the property line and dumping it at the park. Parks are important for cities, and if you don't want people driving around on cars and having all the traffic, the parks closer to your house are much more obviously useful. If you can just walk to the park and get some exercise walking to the park instead of getting in your car and driving somewhere and then having to worry about where to park and then having to pay for parking. If you have it close by your house, then you're, much better off. So I know when I went to school in Farmingdale, the school was trying to save money, so stuff like in between the parking lots and the dorm buildings, they would keep the lights off. The only part of the whole campus where they would actually have lights is right by the security office. But the security office wouldn't come out if there was an event. If there was some kind of thing, they would just call the police and wait for the police to go to the security office and then accompany the police. So it took longer for anything to actually happen. So the city, the school, the people that lived at the dorms, took it upon themselves to run security for the school, and it worked. And if you had the same principles applied to the parks, people in the neighborhoods could take care of the parks if they knew that there were parks there that they could take care of and take ownership of. And I think I would have done I would go in there chop off the long branches and then haul out the log instead of driving heavy machinery into the middle of a swampy area and getting stuck. I don't think that's helpful, so think about that moving forward. A block away from the garden club, across the street from my house, on the end of the property line, the water table is 2 feet above the drain, because it's a 2-foot diameter pipe, and the drain is only 2 feet wide, and it's 95 feet long. So before you even get to the end of the drain, the water is already above the height of the pipe. And I've asked about the work that was done. You don't have work orders. If you want to have a plan that you want to be able to tell people, write it down first and keep records of it and provide those records to the public when they're asked. Public service is a public trust, and I have the right to ensure and sustain that trust against abuse.
Thank you. One of the topics he mentioned is sort of adopt a park, which I love. We discussed that. I'd love to get like a timeline, and not that of a timeline to discuss an adopt a park concept, rollout plan, how others.
It's part of the PrAC.
Okay.
Yep. So
That's
it's,
part of-
yeah, y'all gave him another 6 months, I think, to June 30. So,
Okay, cool.
yep.
The other, I drove around with a citizen yesterday, and he actually pointed out Lake Huntington, oh my gosh, Massillon Bayou on 6th Street. A lot of these coastal edges are adjacent to city properties. And months ago, Kessia, and I think it was Keith Medford at the time, and UF Agriculture Extension and I, and then Dr. Jessica Graham all met about invasive species. And they were supposed to be giving us a list of invasive species, and even there are nonprofits that come down. World Changers is one of them, but there's other work groups that come in who will actually help us with the labor to pull out invasive species in those areas. And the citizens' point is, if some of those areas were cleared in a kind, eco-friendly way, that you would then start seeing this area, the view open up, and how these are beautiful vistas that we're kind of hiding through scrubby. And I'd love to see a maintenance plan to keep those views open, not ripping out native species, but ripping out the things that should be ripped out. And those initial conversations have happened, and were great, and everyone was on board. And just like any idea, they start getting stale and people get distracted. And I'd love to see those kind of continue forward, where we have plans for clearing those out. And then adopt a park, I'm very excited about that as well. Anything related to park maintenance we talk about? No? Okay.
I look forward to the report from the PrAC, so.
Awesome. Anyone else?
Yeah, before you
That-
go out and sell
We
parks.
let's please let other people talk so we don't go into a whole.
Okay, but if we get to the end,
Yeah,
I
sure.
do have other things. I would like
Absolutely.
to-
Who's next? Anyone else? We're gonna go back to Derek Thomas. I do have one thing I want to talk about. I could save it for the end. I'll save it for the end. Come back up. You continue. If there's no one else that wants to go.
0540, 0541, and 0542 are 3 cases with code enforcement because they had undeveloped land. There's obviously hundreds of acres of undeveloped land around the city, but the code enforcement is not always used equally throughout the city. The only 2 people that I know that had unsecured pools and stuff, one of them, the house is in probate. And I can drive around all over the city and see pools that are unsecured, but the one person in probate court who's not even up in front of a judge for 6 months because it was during COVID, that's the person that code enforcement decides to go after. I filed a complaint against the people across the street. I know that other people in my neighborhood filed a complaint against the people against my street. Those complaints were not recorded by code enforcement. They did not tell me who filed a complaint against the person next to the corner lot or the person across the street when they had weeds 4 times taller on the corner lot property, and why they weren't being, even the complaints filed against them weren't even being recorded. And so now you get hundreds of acres, and it's right next to a park, Joe Moody Harris Park. It's at the end of the block. That was closed. And for years, they're paying taxes and paying taxes. As of today, they owe $31,500 in day fines. And by the end of the close of business today, they'll owe $33,000 in day fines for those 3 lots, even though there's 2 other lots that are identical, that are attached to the same block, and there's hundreds of acres all over the city. How is the city using code enforcement to take away people's property like that. They sat there and put up with the city telling them, just wait, just wait, just wait. We're going to fix up this park that has, chain link fence covering it up. So they can't invest money because there's no park at the end of the street. And just when the city decides to resurface the roads and fix up the park, now they're being driven out, being told, thanks for the money for all these years. We're going to give this land to somebody else.
What parcel is that?
It's, what is it, 1,000 some hundred block of East 9th Street. So it's
Do you know the name?
Joe Moody Harris Park. Right next to that, there's a street that goes down. It's about 2 blocks away from a 4-story high-density development. And that could be a nice neighborhood for the rest of the other side. The north side of the street has just single-family houses. It doesn't need a big, giant, massive 4-story high-density apartment complex across the street. They could, if the city had fixed up this stuff since the hurricane, they could have found somebody to invest in just putting nice houses there. But instead of going across the board and saying everybody has to meet the same standards, you're saying, okay, according to whatever the local groups and organizations want, we'll determine which code enforcement cases we investigate and which we don't. And that's already not fair because those people are not publicly listed, they're not elected, and they have no accountability other than their friends and making money for themselves. That's not right. And then code enforcement doesn't even record complaints when they're made. And when I ask them who filed these complaints against these other people, code enforcement won't tell me except off the record. I didn't ask for it off the record.
So just, your email is dtpanama, correct, at Gmail?
Yes.
Okay, I'm looping into an email with Jonathan. I believe, so he's saying that there's no record of an origin of a complaint, which we have to have an origin of a complaint, correct?
Correct. You cannot anonymously file code compliance.
So my email to Jonathan is, I want to know all code enforcement cases nearby 1,000 East 9th Street. That's the closest address that I can be given. I want to be updating all those so we can find the address he's talking about to get the origin of the complaint to send it to him.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Can I comment to that?
Yes,
I live
sir.
in that
Yes,
block.
ma'am. Yeah.
So, I live in 921 North Center Avenue, and I own 915 North Center Avenue as well. We did have a code enforcement sweep. We had a code enforcement sweep. Just about every last one of my neighbors, because we all talk to each other. I've been there for 32 years. Asked each other who called on the other because we're close. We eat together and we hang out, right? And we're all very honest if we do. Because majority of it's seniors, and if it's not the seniors, it's now their children that live there. As the reason I have my property. Nobody knew anything about a code enforcement call on the other. I had to take care of my property, which was my husband had a car out front that did not have the current tag on it, even though the current tag was in the house, and he tried to say, wait, let me go in the house and bring the tag out for you to see it. He did that, then it was something else, and next time when they came out, it was something else, and the code enforcement person was not very kind. And I had to remind them, you are an employee, you act like you are the city, like this money is coming to you, and we're not disrespectful people. My neighbors own a lot that is connected to the railroad track, the railroad track, and then it's Joe Moody. And some of the property that they thought was theirs actually wasn't theirs. It actually was owned by the Bay Line, and they had to tell them, no, my property line starts here, but it was a battle back and forth. So that whole area that he's talking about has had a code enforcement sweep. We watched them go from, and I can show you my Simply camera videotape. Watch them go from house to house to house to house, even looking over people's privacy fences on the back of the truck, like, what can we see going on here? And so it makes you feel like it's predatory. It may not be the intention, but that's how it comes about. My question I do have is, what is the progress with Joe Moody? I do remember seeing something briefly about it coming up and some development coming. I have not said this publicly until today. In 3 months, I have my last and final child being born, and I would like to use the park because the first time I came about the park was when my last child was being born, okay? And so I would like to be able to walk, which is 1 block, to the park and use it if it's gonna be feasible before this daughter graduates high school. So can we get an updated on that as well?
Yeah.
So I can speak to the
Yes, please do.
the park, but we're gonna address the code enforcement first.
Yeah, I think that's a
I got a
lot.
question. So we've talked about two mechanisms of code enforcement. One is reactionary, which is only when a person creates a complaint. The other is patrol basis, which is they drive around. Are we doing both? Are we doing, is it only initiated or things like that? I mean, I know when Commissioner Halligus was here, we were very aggressive on saying, hey, we'd like you to be proactive in that. So is that what's going on?
The answer is there's both, Commissioner.
Both,
Yep.
okay, okay.
So, on the weekends, you'll also, look for like a lot of unpermitted work at times, and it's one of those things where if there are obvious violations, again, our goal is to help bring people into compliance, not necessarily drive around, with a big mallet, but it is both. We do both patrol and we respond to complaints that are filed formally.
Do they have a map that they follow on their patrol pieces? Is there like some system similar to how we do with trash pickup or things like that?
I'll have to confirm that, but it's my understanding that they do have regions or areas that each code compliance person is responsible for. And I'll follow up and confirm that with Mr. Fuller.
And if we could possibly get a copy of that, because I think it would feel a lot less aggressive if everybody knew everybody was being treated the same. That would feel completely different than, oh, I feel like my street got targeted this week, kind of thing. So if they are doing patrol, as long as we're doing it evenly, I think that's the thing. And then obviously reactionary is going to happen, So.
And if
Right.
you'll email me all of the addresses that were involved on your street that you're aware of, I'll follow up to ask for the origin of those complaints. As for Joe Moody Harris Park, after the government shutdown and all that stuff, we now have official word and money that we can get started. So we're having a meeting on Monday, January 20, whatever that Monday of the 20th is, at MLK Rec Center to talk about Joe Moody Harris Park. Certainly we have ideas and plans. Things have changed over the years from what was, that one meeting we went to when we thought it was imminent. And so we want community input as we move forward with the redevelopment. So that community meeting is Monday, January 26th, I believe it is.
Correct, at the MLK Rec Center.
At 5:30 p.m.
5:30 p.m.
Hopefully the plans will include a plaque for Joe Moody Harris of who the man was and his significance to the community and all that kind of fun stuff as well. I want to go back to code enforcement. We've made steps, cosmetic steps, changing code enforcement to code compliance. I even saw, and I know there's an initiative this year to improve written communication from that department as well. I think every inspector and enforcement officer's job is very hard. You're coming to someone's home or business they're in the middle of something, whether it's watching Wheel of Fortune or working on their business, and they're like, who are you? And that's a very hard situation to be in. And I saw recently that there was actually code enforcement cars in our parking lot from Walton County, and I'm hoping they're kind of all getting together, swapping notes. Hopefully there's a code enforcement
Convention.
happening. How do we best be friendlier? And we've made changes, even calling it code compliance. One of their vehicles said compliance through education. I was like, ugh. I don't even like the way that sounds, because I would never tell someone
Ours or somebody else's?
someone else's.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. What I'd love to see is us not just educating all the inspectors on statutes and things, but best practices of communication. What is the friendliest way to approach someone where they don't feel like, oh my God, why are you looking over my fence? Oh my gosh, why are you coming after me? Oh my gosh, why are you explaining things in a weird way that I don't understand? This is legalese. Because it feels, even for someone who has money and means, that you're being attacked and singled out, and it immediately puts me into fight mode as a citizen. And maybe we call it neighborhood beautification specialists or something. Maybe they wear tie-dyed shirts. I don't know, I'm being facetious. But what ways can we best arm them to not put them in situations to be adversarial towards citizens, that the citizens feel like we are working for the neighborhood, not to attack you and to single you out. And that's what I would like to see in the written communication, all the above, where it doesn't feel so adversarial. Because what you'll have is, to survive in those departments, I believe, in any job, to survive in any job that is adversarial, you become hardened to survive, to and we don't want.
It's human nature.
It's human
We
nature,
could have
yeah.
7 people come up and tell us, oh, you're wonderful and
Yeah.
that, this, that, and the other, and one person
Yeah.
say something negative, and somehow, human nature, we will hold on to that one negative thing and not put it in the perspective. And so I think a code compliance officer, you know, that 1 or 2 here or there, they're bracing themselves because they don't know what they're gonna get.
Yeah, yeah, and there's potentially another city who's come out with a way to continually, you know, put the air back in themselves of we're community. That's what these meetings do for me, man. This is because most of this is a very customer support job, and these meetings refill my sail of like we're neighbors helping neighbors, man. And I think there's a way to help that sort of attitude and the refilling of the sales that we're all just humans dealing with each other for code enforcement and our inspectors as well, and be less adversarial because being adversarial just comes with a hardening of getting beat up in a tough job, you know, so. Yeah.
Yeah, but to answer the one question, so yeah, there is very similar to like Public Works Association, Florida League of Cities. There is a code compliance or code enforcement, you know, organization nationally, state level, and then there's the regional footprint. And so they take turns hosting like a monthly lunch, like because they have continuing
Yeah.
professional education. And so we host it down in this room. Usually, I think 2 or 3 times a year, we take a turn hosting it. And so that's why you saw folks from kind of around the central part of Northwest Florida here at City Hall.
So I will say from my experience, you know, dealing with code compliance, out of multiple experiences in talking with citizens who've dealt with code compliance or code compliance has dealt with citizens, I'm not saying that your experience here is wrong or that, you know, you're incorrect by any means, but that's the first time I've heard any kind of unprofessionalism coming out of code compliance. So I'm just telling you.
Not my first time.
Yeah, but usually in Ward 3, I'm thinking back on all the code compliance issues, and we've had some doozies. We've had some big ones where like people had a pool that they were just using as a trash heap, you know, things like that, and it's like it's causing nuisance with the neighbors and yeah, I mean it's hard, right? It's hard because you got to go figure out is this what's happening here, and yeah, I don't know. Just thinking back, and I'm like, well, I haven't had any complaints coming back where the person says they treated me badly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if I just, so I think what I've experienced, and you know, through code, and even in the past, you know, just knowing folks that work in government, it's what I've seen is, and I'm not going to sit here and ever say that 100% of the city employees always act professional, nor do elected officials. We're all human and we all make mistakes and everything.
I feel attacked.
Yeah, just a little
I
bit.
feel seen.
You feel seen. I love it. That's great right there. So, but you know, when you see these kind of cases pop, one of the reasons why I think you see again prefaced with I know that sometimes in code compliance, even maybe some of our police officers and our building services folks, nobody bats 1,000, okay? But when you get a complaint from a neighbor, there's not a lot you can do to that neighbor, but you can come to your elected officials and put pressure on them. You can, you know, you can actually blame the code compliance person, and it's easy to effectuate that as opposed to really do anything to your neighbor other than retaliatory. Now they start calling in complaints on their neighbor. So I've seen that happen a lot of different times, which is why the state changed the law where you can't anonymously file complaints, because people were doing it to, you know, to kind of target and even, I would say, harass their neighbors.
Yeah, there is a call. I've had multiple citizens in Ward 2 north of 5th Street want to strengthen code enforcement there. So, you know, sometimes we're saying, don't sweep the neighborhoods, be chill. And then some neighborhoods are like, you got to get these neighbors cleaned up.
Yeah.
And they don't want to put their name on the record. And so I'm like, and that's why I've always advocated for neighborhood groups just to come together. Like every great neighborhood has a neighborhood group that's like keeping the standard high and then helping those who need actual help, like an elderly neighbor. So neighborhood groups are super important. Yes, sir.
Virgil, Marshall. I was good until we talked about code enforcement. There's been a long-standing dispute with my neighbor on my vacant lot, which is at 1617 Fountain Avenue. And code enforcement actually took sides and brought teen court out to her yard and cleaned it. Is that the norm? If they were going to mediate this, they should have cleaned the whole property line, not bring teen court and clean her property because they felt sorry for her. That's wrong. So they do pick sides. They do some stuff that's probably questionable. And I'm only bringing that to the table because they do it.
I'm sorry, Virgil, you said your lot or somebody else's lot?
My neighbor,
It'd be 1613, it looks like. House with a little porch on the side.
no.
No, he
the
said it was a vacant lot.
Yes,
Oh.
so it should be 1617.
17.
Oh, 1617. Oh, that makes
Right.
sense.
But you
My-
own it or somebody else owns it?
No, I owned it.
Okay,
My neighbor claimed that there was a nature event, a wasp or something, came over and
stunned her?
just stung her brother sitting on the porch.
Okay,
And if you look, she did a renovation 10 years ago. And I said, I'll clean that property line when you put that fence back up that I allowed you to take down so you could access your backyard. So she called code enforcement. They felt sorry for her and had teen court come out and clean her yard. And that was the date. I can go back and get you that date. It was the date that we had Miss Betty Gammon's funeral, because I looked down from the church at 1500 Fountain Avenue and saw all the lime-colored shirts, and I drove down there and it was teen court.
yeah.
If they were going to mediate this issue, they should have cleaned the whole property line, not just clean her yard.
Okay.
So they do some funny business.
Well, I don't know that funny business is the right word. Let me clarify just for the process. So first off, our code compliance team has no ability to really like make you do something. If you don't work with them to get something into compliance, eventually it comes before a magistrate, which is going to be a state of Florida licensed attorney who's been identified and approved by the commission to be a magistrate judge to adjudicate these issues in our city. That being said, if we do get complaints, I know that there are lots of volunteer groups, whether it be churches or community groups, who are like, hey, they tell us, hey, if an elderly person, you know, or maybe someone that has some type of disability or doesn't have the financial, you know, ability to handle the problem, let us know, and we have groups that would love to come in there and clean up their property. Now, so that is probably what happened. But
If
as
you say
far
Parks
as,
and Rec group,
Well, no,
clean
this
up
was-
someone's property, let us know.
No, this was actually,
did I say Parks and
No,
Rec?
no, I'm saying if
If it was.
yeah.
Oh, no, he said teen court.
No,
It was teen court.
yeah, this is actually. the
Not Parks
folks-
and Rec, like
Yeah.
teen
No,
court.
teen
yeah.
court. These are actually the people that clean up Greenwood Cemetery normally.
Like
just-
volunteers, yeah.
Well, they're, maybe
Are
they got
maybe
community
you're
hours.
saying like community
They're
service.
encouraged
Ah,
volunteers.
Community
yeah.
hours. So they actually came over for 4 streets over and said, oh, we'll just clean this up for that.
Well, somebody had to ask him to do it, I would
Well,
think.
that's what I'm saying, because
Yeah.
the guy felt sorry for her. He even told me, and I have witnesses, that he said, well, you know, I'll help her. I said I'd help her do this and that. Well, he actually got teen court to do it. So I'm just saying, there is a bias sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, if one of our employees helped introduce volunteer assets for someone, citizen, that's for that organization.
I think that's a good
My
thing.
point would be, if it's our code enforcement, which is not what he's saying, the problem would be if our code enforcement was getting city employees to clean up, that would be.
No, that's
bad.
what happened. That's exactly what happened.
Okay, but teen court's not our folks.
Well, they're supervised by the folks that was in that, because it was a city van with a city logo, and they were doing community hours, and normally it's not uncommon to see community hour teams clean up Greenwood Cemetery.
Okay. Well, I mean,
I'll just add to that, with the Code Compliance Department, we've built a relationship with Glenwood Revitalization Project. When there is a senior, someone who isn't financially able to cut, we do get that list from them, especially for Ward 2. And we connect with Teen Court and some other private lawn care services to make that happen. I can't remember if the address that you spoke of, Virgil, was one of them, but we have partnered to do that in Ward 2. and have, make that happen to help those, so that it doesn't go to Mass Trade, it doesn't go further up the chain, especially when it's a senior or someone that
So
can't
just
afford it.
Virgil's saying, it sounds like one of our crews was supervising a teen court crew at the cemetery and then brought them over to that lot. Is that correct?
That's what it appears
Okay,
to
that's what it
be.
appears to be. That's what Jonathan will research.
Yeah,
that
I'm,
clarifies.
I'm
And
not
if-
familiar with teen court. This is the first, I've actually moved back 4.5 years ago. I've not heard anybody talk about teen court. I do know that any type of prisoners, kind of that work release program that we used to have access to, after Hurricane Michael and after COVID, that has not come back
Disappeared.
to the city at all. We do not have any of that. So none of that has happened in a minimum of 6 years.
What year would that have been, or approximate date, do you know?
It was last year. I mean, I can actually get you the actual, it was last year. I'll actually get you the date.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to
was.
learn more about that.
Because they were cleaning up the cemetery that same
Well,
day.
it's a crew that normally cleans up the cemetery doing their community hours, you know, in teen court or whatever it is, and he had him up there. And the only reason I believe that that's what he did, because he said, hey, I felt sorry for her, so I was gonna help her till I had to even come over on my day off and help her put the fence up.
And I think what we're missing here is there was a conflict between two neighbors. They both had code issues. And,
One got theirs taken care of and the other one didn't.
and there was an unfairness. And so code compliance didn't leave the neighborhood better, I think is
I mean,
what,
it was a
what your
standoff,
concern is.
And basically, I said, hey, I'll clean the property line when you put the fence up. And her response is, well, I can't afford to put the fence up. Then they jumped in.
We'll look into it. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
I did not come up here for that initially. I just, when he said teen court, and I know that we've helped with that. But I actually came up here to share an announcement. Starting today, Michelle Bryant, I have to say my name, The Work of Our Hands is doing an exhibit here at the Panama City Center for the Arts in the main gallery. There will be over 14 fabulous artists that will have their art on display. I hope each of you get the opportunity today at the grand opening or the opening reception from 1 to 3 right here on 19th East 4th Street. It's open to the entire community. If you're unable to come today to meet the artists, the artwork will be on display from today until February 21st. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. I saw you slowly creeping over.
Well, this kind of got me going, the code enforcement thing. No, in a good way, in a good way. I love Facebook. I love city Facebook pages. I don't like complaining on Facebook so much. I like information. I like positive posts and all. And one of the things I like about some of the cities with their Facebook pages and their code compliance, as we call it, a lot of places still call it code enforcement, is they educate the community. They show the community how keeping your properties helps your city, helps your property values, helps you bring in neighbors that want to buy the homes and keep their yards and all that. And I think it would be very advantageous for us to do some of that. I also was very involved with getting Victor Dover here. And I went to all the shreds. And one of the things that kept coming up was lack of code enforcement in our area and how it made our area look bad, how we needed to improve how we looked. And I think if the city would do a better job of showing people what needs to be done for you to be in compliance. And some of it is just so easy, but a lot of people don't know things like you can't have a car in your front yard on blocks, those kind of things. But if we could educate some where you need to keep your yards mowed, you can't let your grass grow up, those kind of things, because I think a lot of people, it's my property, I can do what I want to, and they don't understand that we do have codes, and I think it would be helpful for us if we did a better job of educating about some things. And it doesn't have to be a negative thing, it has to be how this will help our community.
I agree.
Okay.
The intention of a rule is very important.
Yes.
And most logical people, usually I hate all the rules. I'm like, rules suck. But then I hear the rule, I'm like, all right, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I do want exit signs in my building so no one burns alive. and things like that. And then you really start spotting the bad actors of people who
Yeah.
truly don't care. So
Yeah.
I agree.
And if you watch, Alan, when somebody starts to clean up a property, well, then the neighbor looks and says, "Whoo, maybe I should clean my
Yeah.
property.
Oh,
That
yeah.
looks
Nobody
so
wants to have the
good
worst-
over here."
Very few people want to have the worst house in the block. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's just my thing. And like I said, if you Facebook pages, cities, they all do it, you know, and it's in a positive light. It's not, you know, a lot of them, and they will say we use carrot and stick, you know, carrot first, then stick. But let's educate a little bit before we start fussing.
I agree.
Got it?
Yeah, we're starting up a series called Wednesday Wards.
Ward Wednesday.
Wards Wednesday. I knew I was going to get it wrong. And so, yeah, I mean, this is going to be once a month for every ward, as far as I know. So we're gonna run out of topics pretty quick, right? So, so I think that's one of them that we absolutely should do. I recently, about a year or two ago, we had some neighbors kind of start doing the back and forth thing, and it kind of started with an RV, and so what I saw on, yeah, you haven't heard about this?
No.
Yeah, so you're like the only one. So what I saw on social media was a lot of, it's my property, I can do what I want. It's my property, I can do what I want.
It's
And
America.
It's America, right? And while I love that mindset, I love that American freedom mindset. When you do choose to move into a city, you do choose to abide by those, or at least be subject to the
Zoning.
ordinances and the zoning and the. You can't just open up a commercial property, you know, in the middle of a neighborhood, right? And when you start pointing those things out to people, usually on a one-on-one basis, they get it, they understand. They don't want a garage shop opened up next to them that's going to be open till midnight every night, you know, removing tires and all that good stuff, all those noises that come from that. So yeah, I think we absolutely need to have a communications push on this, because people just tend to default back to, it's my property, I can do what I want.
And it's advantageous to the entire city. It's
Yeah.
not just that one neighbor next to them.
Yeah.
It helps all of us when we look better. It helps bring our city up, and that's what we want. And it's also very awkward for neighbors for one to report the next, and then they get into this,
Yeah.
the RV thing. So let's try to work it where people want to clean up their properties and where they understand that we can't have certain things in our front yards. Point them out and educate the community a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's where I think neighborhood groups would be a great help. I mean, the city can only do so much, and even if we do everything that we can do, it's not gonna go as far as neighbor to neighbor working together. And what do we want on our street? How do we wanna look, kind of thing.
I'd like to encourage the commissioners in each ward to have a yard of the month or yard of the quarter. Not just like, oh, you got plants, but even celebrating like, hey, this is an amazing Christmas light display. That's part of the carrot, which is like, not just tell people what we don't want, but tell them what we do want. You know, that positive reinforcement of like, yeah. It'd be super, it's not expensive, and you know, we just put some signs and you stick a little sign in the yard of the month, you take a picture and you celebrate someone who's working hard.
The ones that, the one in St. Andrews, sometimes there's some people that are pretty competitive.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's get people
Like, I was gonna
competitive.
get this yard of the
But
month.
there again is where a neighborhood association could help. So when you look at Ward 2 and you see that it stretches from, you know, Business 98 up North 77 to Baldwin over to Frankfurt, you know, that's a lot of neighborhoods. And so to be able to fairly choose one yard of the month.
You got 12 options.
By ward, right.
12 chances.
Kings Point has their own. That's the mixture of the county and city residents that
Yeah.
participate in that one.
Or broken down by neighborhood, maybe, where you are spaced out like, Bay Medical area.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's where, as a ward commissioner, I would invite neighbors to be a part of that versus me creating something and said, you're the one for January and you're the one. I don't think.
Finger back at you, why didn't I win?
Exactly. Y'all need to be the ones.
Yeah, I do not pick, just so that's really clear. I'm just there to acknowledge.
But, yeah, but there's an organization
There is,
involved,
yeah.
yes.
Who picks the dog mayor?
I do not pick that this time by voting.
Okay.
They sell votes.
It's a donation thing, yeah.
They sell votes. Probably good that you're not involved in that.
Yeah,
It's literally a bought election.
You know, when Tim said he was here to listen and not to talk, I didn't believe him for a second.
Yeah.
Are you
Not
gonna
for a
talk about code
second.
compliance or something else?
Well, a suggestion, Tim Fontaine, and you've kind of talked about it already, but there's an opportunity for the city to have a code compliance board of citizens, like we do a lot of other functions with the city, one from each ward that would actually field some of the issues before they go to the magistrate. In other words, take care of the neighborhood that was mentioned by Mrs. Lucas, and have a representative from each ward to be the in-between citizen group between land use and the magistrate.
I like it.
It's my understanding that there used to be one when code enforcement was part of the police department, but it got moved to be part of development services, and then we've shifted away from the all black, tactical gear, and I've moved them towards like khakis and similar color shirt that Derek's wearing. So he might be an undercover code compliance person. I don't know. So, I will say this. I think too, one thing, it really is a two-way street. I think that if we live in a neighborhood and someone flags something for us that maybe needs attention on our property, it's critical to have some humility and admit, you know what, you're right. That car has been broken down in my front yard for 6 months. I'm sorry. Let me take care of that. But a lot of times it's hard to do. It takes a lot of humility to admit that you probably let your house or yard kind of get away a little bit, and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, yes and no. That's a very coming in this room with the cameras on and a magistrate judge. That's very nerve wracking for someone who already is skeptical of government or never been here. You're Johnny Government. You know all this stuff. But for a normal citizen who receives a letter, it's terrifying.
No. I'm saying if one of your neighbors comes, and if I live next door to Tim, hey buddy, that car's been in front of your house for 6 months, like broken down. Come on.
I get it. Logical people, yeah. But you're dealing with people who are like, maybe they can't afford something, or maybe they have, it's my property thing.
So then it would need to come here. What I'm saying is, if neighbors can't work it out amongst themselves, then you leave me no option to bring it to. I'm trying to avoid it coming to the city and to the magistrate.
I do like the idea that Tim brought up about a committee that might feel a little more friendly, like you're dealing with neighbors.
Instead of directly with the city.
I do like that. And I mentioned this with all the rewriting of guidelines and things. I'd love to see us, before we say, ta-da, we've rewritten all our guidelines, there's a citizen group that goes, I don't understand the first paragraph. Because you get in any business, you create this silo of like, oh, I understand the processes. So we need citizen groups of saying, when I get this letter, this is scary because I don't know what to do next. And so how can we make these approaches less adversarial so the citizen isn't upset, and then our team doesn't have to deal with such an upset citizen, which makes their job harder. That's what I'm advocating for.
And if I could add, the code compliance.
Well, you got people online. I'm sorry, Michelle, if you want to come talk.
So, well, she's coming up. I like
And then
the
I have two things I'll
idea.
talk
I
about.
just there's some ditches here that I'd kind of like to identify if we're going to even consider moving in this direction. One is that they definitely need to have a purpose and a known purpose with, hey, this is what you're here to do as a board. And the other one is we don't want it to be like an HOA for that area, right? Like that's the other
That's an
side
unintended
of it.
consequence.
Exactly. So it's like, hey, we need you to know exactly what you're here to do, so you're not just making stuff up. And then on the other side of that is we don't need you to go too far where it's like, hey, your paint's chipping, like,
Sure.
and you repaired it with a different color, that kind of stuff. And I realize that, some people like to live in HOAs and a lot of people don't.
Or begin policing Halloween and Christmas decorations.
Yeah, exactly.
no.
Because then we'll have a lot of citizens that'll I think, show us exactly how they can decorate for every holiday.
And then after Michelle,
that's all I really
I have
wanted to.
I have two things.
I just want to add for the code compliance department is that on a positive note, they are doing similar what she was mentioning, what you were talking about. It's not an official committee, but again, going back to Ward 2, when there is someone that's a senior disabled, or when that letter is sent and they come to code compliance and say, hey, I can't afford to get this moved, I can't afford to get this cut, they reach out to us as an organization to find resources within the community to make that happen, so that it doesn't have to go to the next level. And then if it's something beyond what we can do, then they as an organization look to other organizations that may have those resources to make that happen. So I just want to get up and share that they are doing that.
Awesome.
To their best ability. Now, a full-fledged committee, I don't know, but on an unofficial committee level, they are using every avenue to help citizens before they go to the magistrate.
Love it, appreciate that. Speaking of standards, Jonathan and I and Nevin, or our weekly meetings, we were discussing, and you might have seen on Facebook, our utility poles and cable lines and electrical lines. And as you, and this is, part of this is educating citizens, part of this is updating the board on discussions that we've had. If you look, there's, most utility poles have tags on it to talk about who owns the extra utility pole. A lot of times you'll see a pole just sitting there. Those can be yanked out by the owner. They're ready to go. FPL is the most responsive of the group. AT&T is also pretty responsive. They have government affairs people you can email. Often they're waiting on a cable line. So the cable lines are the lower lines. They're kind of thicker looking. Those are the folks that I found that are very hard to get a hold of, that everyone's waiting on. And I'm tired of waiting on them. And it's so bad that if you go down 98 and you go by, let's say, near Papa Joe's, there are literal utility poles that have been lopped off at the bottom that are hanging in the air on cable lines. There are broken poles leaned over with one little cable line on it, and the cable and the FPL cannot remove their lines, and they're just waiting on someone from WOW or Comcast to get the darn line off and move it over. I've asked for and sent information on using code enforcement, going after these folks with code enforcement. They're going to get away with whatever we allow them to get away with. It is a hazard now, and they've had plenty of time. One of the action items that we discussed was having staff drive around looking for all right-of-way issues, not just utility poles, but
Any hazard.
Yeah, where's a broken stormwater drain? Where's maybe we've torn out the sidewalk to put a new meter in, we haven't poured the sidewalk back.
Right-of-way blocking. You come to a corner, there are many of those. You come to a corner and you can't see because of the overgrowth.
Yep.
And it's in the right-of-way. It's not private property.
Yep, so the goal is to have a definitive list of drive every 231 miles or 35 miles, wherever it is, have a definitive list, and then put the utility companies on notice that we're gonna start finding them and have some sort of, that may be March, April, but put them on notice of we need action in X number of days, or we're gonna start finding everybody.
So I might point you guys to a framework we've got coming to us in February, which is something that Nevin and we've been working on for a few months, regarding the ditches that are along the railroad tracks. You know, we created a parameter with this ordinance that says, hey, this is the timeline, this is what you need to do. That one, you know, even if we get a response, now they're wanting to charge us $5,000 to just go look and see what grass needs to be cut. It's pretty.
He's not
bad.
making this
I'm not
up.
making it up. I mean,
crazy.
Who wants to charge us?
the
The
railroad
railroad.
company.
Oh, wow.
But it's their property.
Exactly. And
But
so
they're not
it's their
maintaining it.
responsibility, similar to how these cables are these cable companies' responsibilities too. So, you know, Nevin, I don't know if we're ready to circulate something, but that would be good to get out. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And it's gonna be citywide coverage of.
It's
railroad
citywide coverage of the
properties.
railroad property because it's the only property owner in the city that I'm aware of that we're maintaining their property. And now they're wanting to charge us for maintaining their property. That doesn't make any sense.
Can we sue them?
I think that's where it may end up going, you know, over time. But that is exactly where it may end up with these cable companies too. They've got very powerful lobbyists at the federal and state level, and they've insulated themselves from accountability. And we need citizen support to push back against these faceless people that sit in large offices in big cities
And control our
and control what happens. And so I'm fully supportive. I myself have gone around and taken pictures of polls, and I've gotten to the government affairs, and they are good about taking action when we get it. But I'm also like, I also ask the question, I'm like, I'm kind of doing your job, guys. Like, I mean, it's not I don't own this. The city's not making, revenue off of what you're doing with this abandoned cable, and it makes
So-
our city look bad.
So when you send it up, do you get results? I mean, we've had citizens who've gotten the numbers, who've made the list, we've sent it, and the lights are still off.
Depends, but a lot of times, yes. I actually think you've gotten way more response from the telecom companies. Now,
Yeah.
FPL, I've always gotten a response.
FPL's great.
I've always gotten.
Yeah, now AT&T, I got them into a pole. They just chopped it and left it in a pile. Like, take the pole.
Yeah, I mean, they're all over the place. AT&T did good for a little while. We got a lot out of the historic district in St. Andrews through that process. Talking to the CEO's admin in Dallas, like that's literally what it took. But I think this is not working. It's obvious. We're 7 years after a storm, and there is some accountability. And I get you don't have an office here, but that's not our issue. You have infrastructure here that you need to maintain.
So I have a longer term potential solution for this. And it was recently brought to me by a citizen, and so I'm still researching it, but the overarching idea is that the city invests in conduit along the roadside. And there's specific type of conduit that municipalities and counties can put in, and then you basically just put everything underground. You force everything underground, and if they want a jack and bore, which is the method that they use to put cables underground without conduit, they can do so. But if they also want to just go an easy route, then they lease the conduit from us, which helps pay for the installation of the conduit. I think that would have massive impact on our ability to weather storms. It would also have huge aesthetic benefits, because you wouldn't have overhead lines. Obviously, so we'll never be able to do 100% underground, because there are some FPL lines that just, because they're so high voltage, they just can't go underground without massive amounts of extra planning around that. But if we got 85% of all the cables underground in the city, and we did so through a program that was kind of self-sustaining, I think that would be a giant win. Obviously, it's not a thing we're going to be able to do tomorrow, but I think it's definitely something that I can't talk to you all about it outside of this meeting or outside of any meeting, right? So I'm going to research it some more.
Please do.
But it's obviously going to be a heavy lift financially on the front end that would recoup money as it continues to progress.
I think we're in litigation right now with FPL, if I'm not correct. Is that correct, Nevin? On doing that for power cables, but we don't currently have anything in process for as far as telecom.
So one idea, and I'm just kind of thinking outside the box here. I mean, there are, to the mayor's point, there's nothing the city can do at all if there's still one cable attached to it, because then we're tearing out, because most of them are communications lines. But if there are like legit just an abandoned pole with nothing on it, I'm thinking here maybe there's like an attachment to one of our trucks or tractors where we can go in there and pull the pole out. It's easy to fill back in the dirt or repair the concrete, and then we send that bill to whoever owns that pole, and we kind of rack and stack that. At the end of the day, I hear people might say, well, that's not really y'all's job, but I'm like, at some point, we got to take ownership of getting our city back to where we wanted.
Yeah.
And these poles are absolutely junking up the right of way. They're unsafe. They look terrible.
Sometimes
and
they're blocking a sidewalk.
they're blocking.
Yeah.
They're in the middle of sidewalks. And number two, it's like when you almost create. They call it like a forest of telephone poles. I mean, we're heading in a direction to try to move everything underground. But that's probably going to take, the next 20 years to really get everything underground in our city and county. And so in the meantime, my view is let's have as few number of we call them telephone poles or power poles as possible. And so that's something I'll have Public Works kind of look into that.
Well, but
So-
to push back on that, once the pole is abandoned, like there's nothing on them, FPL, AT&T have been removing them. I've gotten like 12 or 15 removed at this point in like 24 hours. They're quick. It's the WOW cable lines. They're literally as a telephone pole sitting there with just Wow's line on it, and it's like
Yeah.
one screw, and they just move it to the next pole, and they have one person here doing all their stuff, and they need to have like a whole crew here fixing our stuff up. So I don't think the problem is in the once the pole's abandoned, they get them out. It's the cable companies who just don't have enough resources here to move the lines over to get the pole to be abandoned.
Yeah.
So when I see a pole that's just sitting there, they yank them out quick. They've been awesome. So, and I have one more item I want to talk about.
What?
And, okay, so, and this is something you and I talked about. So skateboarding, what I want to stop the city to do, so skateboards will take a curb that's on like a little thing, and they'll just take their little waxy thing, and the edge, they can slide on it, and yeah, it makes it a little bit darker on the edge. But what the city's been doing for years is they'll take pieces of metal and they'll chop them up into these little angle irons, and they'll just drill them all along that edge to stop kids from skateboarding on them. And I think the metal looks worse than just a dirty curb, and because the metal has like sharp edges on it and they fall off, and then it's just weird having a piece of metal on it, and you can't sit on the curb. I would like it just to say, don't do that anymore. And us just have a curb that skateboarders can use. You got right along the edge of Mosey's has a curb that has metal pieces all over it. Up 4th Street, there's metal all over them. People, they get knocked off. I think they're a hazard. I think they're ugly. I want to stop doing that.
Just initial thought on that, I think that those were probably put there at the request of somebody else.
Yeah.
I don't know that we just go around looking for curbs to put metal on.
Yeah, we kind of do, and I
that's
thought
right.
I'm wrong.
Well, there you go.
I thought I emailed back that we needed to kind of get an update on the ordinance, and I was going to put it on one of the virtual workshops. If I didn't actually send, sometimes I think I'm going to send an email, and then I actually don't do it. So if I didn't, I apologize. But I do think we need. Wow, that escalated quickly. I do think we need to look at kind of the ordinance. But Commissioner Granger's point, there are some requests that we get, like we did get one along 4th coming up on that. The problem is that, you know, I think, first off, I agree that skateboarding generally in downtown is great. I know that's why, I know that there were some changes even before I moved back and moved into work for the city. And I applaud that, but I do think it's more than just kind of looking dirty. Like, it actually does chip off the concrete, it does damage, and it does kind of leave a little bit of a graphite there. And there's a lot of these areas, like across from Mosey's, along 4th Street, where people sit on those ribbon curbs because they're high enough. And I actually see those pieces are not cut off; they're actually fabricated to prevent what is called rail sliding. You know, I wasn't a big skateboarder, but I know that's called rail sliding, and you know, there's pluses and minuses to both of it. But I do have we have a downtown crew that regularly maintains those. So if they look at them at least once a month, if they are damaged, we replace them. I don't. That would probably be something I would want to get feedback from the elected officials, from the DIB. I think there's some spots in St. Andrews where we do it too, but it actually is kind of a common practice in downtown areas. I see them all over different things. And if we didn't have a skate, again, I will take it off and paint rail sliding welcome if that's what this commission wants.
We'll put metal caps on it so they can slide even better.
Yeah, there you go. You slide too fast, you'll get hurt. So
then we'll be liable.
Yeah, then we'll be liable. I think we created a skate park because that's where, and they can still skate on the sidewalks and everything. But I think there are, I would agree, there's pluses and minuses to the metal pieces that are specifically fabricated for that. But then there's also probably pluses and minuses to allowing it too, because it does damage the concrete. It does, you know, and if a lady's out, you know, and they sit down and they're, you know, having a drink and they're in white pants, it will stain their pants, and then, you know, so I mean.
But it won't stain men's pants?
And it won't.
If they're white?
I mean, if Tim's out there with his bleach white jeans and he sits on it, so yeah, I think it's part of a broader conversation. I know that there's some ordinance relating to skateboarding downtown. I know that there's a little bit of history where you, as a private citizen, worked very hard with former Commissioner Halligus to get it changed to.
You used to skateboard. I remember
I literally bought a longboard and was skateboarding just to.
Well, as a kid, that was one of the worst injuries I ever had, was on a skateboard, and it was over here, actually right near City Hall. For those from the 80s and 90s here, I'm very athletic, thank you very much. Over here behind Dollar General, we called it the Wall. And now I guess the city or First Baptist Church or somebody put up the concrete columns and the wire, but we were skating down it, and the skateboard went faster than I did, and I really got hurt.
Skateboarding downtown, some of your favorite memories? Is that,
Huh?
is that your
That was not a favorite memory, so.
What I do appreciate about skateboard, there's an area over in St. Andrews that I would love to get activated for skateboarding underneath the overpass. It's just a blank concrete space. I've talked with a few.
Near the port?
Yeah, near the
Okay.
port. I've talked with a couple of organizations that do grants for skateboarding, but we've not been able to get one together. But the good thing about it is activity drives out, skateboard activity often drives out bad activity of just other things. And so, so anyway, I mean, I can support either way on that. So, if it's a problem and we've got people that want to skateboard, I don't have an issue with people skateboarding.
Sounds like a
Let
neighborhood.
freedom ring.
Well, we're not stopping. I want to be clear. Like they're allowed to skateboard on the sidewalks and the roads. It's the actual rail sliding on our curbs that damage it. I will put must rail slide here in order to drive past on there if that's what y'all want. But I guarantee you, it's one of the things. If we take it away, we'll start getting complaints
Let's
that
see it.
They'll
that
look dirty.
They
I
will
mean,
look
Yeah,
dirty.
they look terrible.
And we try the chipping of it and all
angle
that.
iron just chopped up with sharp edges on every cut. So
You've touched them and they're sharp.
yes, you walk past them. It is chopped with a chop saw, miter saw. They just chop it, and it's aluminum just chopped. Now there's little nice bumps that you can buy. Cities will buy those, but these things fall off. They look. If you're going to sit on them, you're going to have a metal indention in the back of your leg.
Okay.
So I think they look. I think we're solving the
Those
problems that have
pigeon
never
spikes.
happened.
What?
Those pigeon spikes?
No, they make
Into
little
that.
little baseball-looking things that cities will screw into.
That
That's
makes sense.
literally meant to stop. I don't want any of that. I think that
Yeah.
the dirty
Yeah.
curb, whatever. Let
I would
kids
kind of
skateboard.
liken it to, I've seen images of cities that do the what they call homeless spikes. You know, it's kind of, you're trying to solve a problem by making it uncomfortable.
Right.
And I don't know that that's the best thing to do. I think just activating a space is oftentimes the right solution. So,
Yes, sir.
I think if we were to look at a more aesthetic, because it sounds like you have two issues here. One is that it's just the aesthetics of it, and then the other one is that you kind of want it to be more friendly to skateboarders, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I would say that if whoever's in that neighborhood, the business owners, the landowners that are in that area, if they want to be friendly to skateboarders in that area, then we could probably look at solutions that protect the curb but also allow for that activity to happen.
Yeah, if you did a continual angle iron, they would actually use that. So
Exactly.
Well, but then that would become sharp and have shards of metal and could be a hazard. So I'm going to look at these myself because they should be putting in. I don't believe we're making those in house. My understanding was they're ordering them and they're like specifically fabricated for this purpose and they should not be sharp. So that's something I will check into.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that idea.
You
Also,
skateboard?
you do.
Okay.
And I'm not as good at it, but on that boulevard you have down at the marina, having those telephone pole looking palm trees and those metal uncomfortable benches right in the middle of that does not make me feel safe to just go around that. If you do finish that around the rest of it, make it a
Metal
little more-
palm trees? What are you talking about?
The umbrella palms, the ones in front of not in front of the hotel, because that has a large concrete space and there's big giant palms, but around the rest of it, it's only like 12, 15 feet tall, so you have like a little pathway on either side of uncomfortable looking metal benches if you hit them, and a bunch of telephone poles that don't have lights on them. And at the pictures shown to the public before you did that were all oak trees and shade, and it was like the main on Harrison where you have nice comfortable benches and you have shade to sit under. That's not what it turned out to be on that, but I don't want to get stuck on just that one thing about
I'm still not. I have no idea what you're talking about, Derek. I'm gonna be honest, and I want to. Can you have my email? Can you send me some pictures specifically what you're talking about?
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
And about the telephone poles, on Beck Avenue, 4 telephone poles down from 15th Street on the west side of the street and south side of the street. There's a electrical box cover that was broken before you put up the new telephone, the new lamp post, but now that you put the new lamp post up and the cover's broken, there's only a 2-foot path in between the lamp post and the hole, and then there's just a curb and then the road.
Where's that?
On Beck Avenue, just on the block, right, four poles down. It's 44469 is the number on the pole, and it's on Beck Avenue. So if you were in a wheelchair, you can't use the west side of the sidewalk. You'd have to go over to the other side, and you wouldn't know that until you were halfway down the block. So it was broken before that, and so I would, if you're gonna have the city go through areas to identify the poles and the cables all over the sidewalk, start on 11th Street, Beck, and Jinx, and anyway, getting sidetracked by that. But don't let, on code enforcement, don't let it become like the county where everybody that didn't have a mortgage on their house was forced to tear their house down because they had a damage on one part of the house. So basically everybody with a blue tarp after a point, if they didn't have an insurance company standing behind them, were forced to tear their house down and stuff. And for people in my neighborhood who have to see, like when you cleared 11th Street for the parade, then they came by 2 blocks away and just mowed the property across the street from me. So I'm on my way to one of the meetings in the morning, and there's a city worker out there taking care of the private property. When they put in the dirt without filing permits, the city said we have no pump truck, even though the pump truck would drive up and down 11th Street. It just wouldn't stop in my neighborhood. And they said, well, we don't have a pump truck for your area. So I think when you see stuff like that, where like Panama City North, where the north side of it, you build up right next to that road, 5 feet above the height of all of the residential neighborhood, and right on the other side of the road is where all the drainage is. You're creating drain. I know somebody that lives up there, and he says his backyard is now flooded because they built up a big giant mound and put in high-density housing so you could have more housing, but you're going into residential neighborhoods and do that. The whole city and all of the different departments, it seems, are picking on specific areas. So if you had a heat map, like the county does with their code enforcement, I think that'd be helpful.
So
Code
anytime,
enforcement heat map.
code enforcement, I like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Anytime you see, it's always easier, and just with Mr. Marshall's comment too, if you see employees doing something they should be doing, just snap a picture. Don't go up to them and start confronting them. Don't be adversarial, but a photo is always very helpful as opposed to like, I saw them do this thing, and so always feel welcome. I send Jonathan 10 text messages a day of pictures of like, hey, what's this? And so
I love those too.
Yeah, I have some pictures from.
He likes about
last
5:30.
year. They're over there spending more money. They're spending more money on my neighbor's property than he's paying in taxes. And I know he doesn't pay in taxes. He doesn't file permits, so he doesn't have to go through any of the rules that everybody else does. And everybody in the neighborhood sees this, and multiple people file complaints, and code enforcement doesn't even have a record that we filed complaints.
Feel free to CC me on any email that you send to the city hall, abranch@panamacity.gov, so we can see. If you have an email that you have sent that I didn't respond to, send it to me and Jonathan or any commissioner up here so we can follow up as well, for sure. We have 5 minutes. Anyone got anything else? I could keep talking about skateboard iron.
I just want to flag the Dover Coal Charettes for the downtown marina. 5 p.m. on Wednesday, January 21st. Thursday, January 22nd at noon. The one Wednesday evening will be on the Rotunda, up on the main level at City Hall, again, 5 to 7 on Wednesday the 21st. Thursday the 22nd, we'll have another one from 12 to 2. That one will be here in this room 10. And then we'll have another one that Thursday evening, beginning a little bit later at 6 o'clock. That'll be up on the Rotunda. So all three will be here at City Hall. Again, Wednesday, the 21st at 5 p.m., and then Thursday at both noon and at 6 p.m. Love to have lots of feedback from the public on those charrettes.
I have 2 really quick things. One, Jonathan, I met with some Truesdale people yesterday. We're in a really positive thing. I'm going to be asking on Monday to add Truesdale onto our nonprofit. We've got a few business owners that are ready to kind of donate to help in those renovations, so I'd like to make sure we've got an avenue for that to happen. And we just didn't get it on the agenda in time. And then the second one is, I discussed with staff yesterday about doing a one-time rebate on the trash pickups. I don't know how many of you guys got feedback from this one, but that was definitely the most feedback I've gotten. I know we had some communication breakdown. I did go back after our meeting and look through some stuff. What I did find is the email alert that went out actually did not have that we weren't going to do trash pickups. So we ended up doing it was just really a missing communication more than anything. It's about $130,000 and maybe less than that for us to do a 10% rebate back. So I don't know what everybody's thoughts on that, because I'd like to add that to the agenda maybe if it seems like that's something that seems reasonable, so.
Paying for something you didn't get, that was the problem. They were paying for trash they didn't get it scheduled up.
Yeah, so I have, similar to how, remember when the resident came and asked for money back on their ad valorem?
Yes.
When
We were doing
we
infrastructure.
were doing infrastructure
Yeah.
improvements, and they, couldn't use the road. Apparently, this is fairly new for Ward 3 and Ward 4.
Man, if this is what
and,
you guys been dealing with,
not very
that would
well
not fun.
expected. I would rather not entertain that because of I think it's gonna result in like $4 to
Yeah,
most people.
$4.30 is what it is per person.
So the amount of work that we're gonna make staff do in order to do that, I would rather find a solution so that we do not do this again in the future. So what I was planning on doing is, on Tuesday, requesting during additions and deletions, I was gonna add transfer station, and I still plan to add the beginning discussions of a transfer station for Panama City. For those of you who don't know what a transfer station is the trucks, when they get full, they have to dump. The trash has to go somewhere. And
It was in our house over the holiday
Yeah.
break, I'll just say that.
So right now, those trucks drive all the way out to Steel Field, and wherever they're at in the route, they drive all the way out to Steel Field, and then they dump, and then they come back, and then they start right back up where they left off. And if we had a transfer station, that basically is an intermediary station between the truck and Steel Field, where things get compacted and it gets more efficient taking it to Steel Field, which is where the dump is. So that was my plan. Tuesday is to
Yep.
bring that up, ask for it to be added.
So maybe let's just talk about trash
Yeah.
on Tuesday.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is I want us to acknowledge that, hey, we messed up. And it was obviously, when I'm taking my trash can out there and all my neighbors see me take my trash can out there, and then it's like, oh, well, the trash is not picking up, and it sits out there for 3 days. You can imagine the dialogue that you get in with just your neighbors is like, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. I'm sure they'll pick it up the next day. And it was just 2 weeks in a row, and it happened to be at the holidays, so nobody could fit as much trash as they needed to in one can, so then it ended up sitting inside the house. It was a not enjoyable experience, and I don't think it's really about the $4.30. I don't think that really changes anything in anybody's household budget. I think it's more or less, we poorly communicated. I would like us to acknowledge that in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
whether that's through, hey, we're not gonna do this again, citizens, and this is why, we heard you, or if that's a rebate, whatever it is, it's more or less from a customer service standpoint. If I was in a private enterprise and doing trash pickup, I would have either rebated or sent out a mass notice and saying, we're so sorry that this ended up confusing, because it wasn't just one people. I mean, it was
citywide.
It was
My own parents, they
citywide.
called me and they said, where's
It
my
was
trash?
bad.
I said, you should call Josh. You call your commissioner.
Yeah, oh.
Merry Christmas.
Thankfully,
I'm off the clock.
I kid you, for me, it was about, and it was during the holidays, City Hall's closed. I mean, it was, I kid you not, no less than 40 to 50 people, which for us, in any scenario, that many people felt the initiative to reach out.
Sure.
There's way more beyond that.
So what changed this year, Jonathan? What caused this?
Yeah, so thanks for that. So I think, and Commissioner Granger kind of alluded to it with the schedule, so the Fontaines know, because they're on a Monday, Thursday route, that a lot of holidays that we don't pick up fall on Mondays or Thursdays. So,
And I like it that you give those
Yeah.
employees time off.
this is one of those things where,
I think we were notified, so.
yeah,
We don't understand.
some people were, some people weren't.
Your email alert did say you would not
Yeah.
receive trash pickup.
So-
Unfortunately, for those of us that got picked up on Friday, the alert did not list Friday as a non-pickup day. So that's kind of.
I think one of them did and one of them did, but it's fine. We're still making fine tunes to the alert system. But we only have 5 holidays where we don't pick up the blue cans. Only 5. New Year's Day, Juneteenth, Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day. There's a 5th one. Give me a second.
4th of July.
Independence
4th of
Day.
July. Thank you. 4th of July. So those are the only 5 days that blue cans don't fall. This particular year, both Christmas Day and New Year's Days were on Thursday. So either way, the Monday, Thursday route was, and Thanksgiving Day is always on a Thursday, you know, and so, and then like Memorial Day and those kind of days are always on like Mondays. And so, you know, I think the Monday, Thursday, that's the point that Commissioner Granger's making. It happens a lot more with the Monday, Thursday route than the Thursday, Friday route. Well, because the, both Christmas Day and New Year's Day fell on a Thursday, we extended that following kind of the federal government's lead and the state government's lead. And so, you know, those, we have 12 holidays as a city, and our blue can guys and gals really only get 5 of those 7. And so this one time we extended that to the long weekend. And the initial notice was not clear, but there was a follow-up notice that was sent out. But again, this was a notice that you had to be signed up for. This was not like a blast to everyone in our system. So hindsight 2020, that's where I'm like, you know, that probably would have been acceptable in my mind to blast the whole city, not just those that signed up for those particular alerts. But we rely on those, usually those are for more like emergencies and to stuff like water outages, water boil notices, road closures. And so I think that's probably the one thing, to Commissioner Street's point, where the comms team could have done a little bit more clearer is, rather than only sending it to subscribers and relying on the Facebook post, because the Facebook post, in my opinion, that kind of stuff is almost, you know, not really irrelevant, but we just can't depend on it because of
It's
the
not official.
algorithm, and it's not efficient.
Yeah.
And so I think if we had done the full list, because we have a right to communicate with you about things that affect, you know, life and safety. Is garbage collection in that? I don't know. So I think
Yes.
I wanted, yeah, it is. I get it. So I want to say it's easy to look back and say we probably should have done that, but I want to defend staff to some degree that they didn't feel that was, quote, a life safety thing, like a water boil notice or, hey, diverting traffic because of A, B, or C. So that's just another chance to please encourage that. So I think, you know, we're going to always, you know, so let me look forward. Next year, Christmas Day is on a Friday and New Year's Day is on a Friday. And those are 2 days that we have not picked up blue cans, from what I've been told, going back decades. And so next year, the Monday, Thursday route will only have that impact on Thanksgiving, but then Christmas and New Year's, the Tuesday, Friday route, which is Sweet Bay, which is, you know, west of Frankfurt Avenue, Commissioner Street's area. And so, I mean, to me, the question is, you know, maybe we get away from ever doing the break, because at that, if we only do those 5 and I never extend it, then it's always going to affect only half the city. If we want to be consistent, maybe we always run the blue cans regardless, and I find another way to compensate those folks that, you know, that work on that route. But to Commissioner Granger's point, what really would make it easier is if we had a transfer station. I'd love that idea. Shane Doherty, our Senior Manager of Public Works, that's exactly what he did for the city of Tuscaloosa. So if we could get on a 3 to 5 year plan to establish that, the big advantage is our side loader trucks and our front loader trucks that do the dumpsters and the blue cans in our neighborhoods. Like, you don't really want them driving hundreds of miles every day to and from Steelfield. You could get like 18-wheeler type trucks with the big beds that are just simply running from Redwood to Steelfield, and that way the front loaders and our side loaders, they could be done by 10 a.m. with the entire route, because they're only running from here to the northeast part of the city, dropping it off, and within 15 minutes, they're back at it, rather than within an hour and a half, which is the time that it
With the
takes.
same amount of trucks, you could do the entire city.
You absolutely, bingo.
I think one of the things I'll point out in this particular case, and I don't think anybody's gonna question not doing pickup on Christmas Day. I wouldn't question that. I would never want our team to have to work on Christmas Day when I'm sitting at home and doing that. But the reality is, most of us that have other jobs, we went back to work on the 26th. Like, it was, hey, this is your standard holiday, this is your 26th. I'm not saying that the guys shouldn't even get that, but I think that there's an aspect of what permeated, and this is important for us to remember when we are in a monopoly situation. People do not have a choice to go anywhere for water, sewer, or trash. We are a monopoly. And so, but that doesn't excuse us from customer service and taking into account the inconveniences that happen on our people when we can't get the services that we need. And I think that's what I'm looking for, is just an acknowledgement of, hey, we understand this made your life inconvenient. I'm glad the team got an additional day with their family. It's not about that. It's about just taking the attitude of customer service in every single thing that we do, not just trash, water, you name it, code compliance, whatever it is. And I think this is just one issue. It sparked up so much because of the communication issues that if we don't acknowledge what happened, then our citizens are going to go with the attitude of we don't care. And I don't think that's true. So
No, I think the only thing I would say is, as part of the discussion, and Commissioner Street and I, we're redoing the conversation from yesterday in my office.
we are. But you guys didn't get to benefit
Yeah,
from that conversation.
so all I would say to that is that, it's, the Tuesday, Thursday, or the Monday, Thursday crowd, all we did was take what was gonna happen to them automatically because of the schedule and apply it to the entire city. So the folks that got, because you said Christmas Day and New Year's Day is reasonable. So that means half the city was okay with, staff getting a little bit of time off around the holidays and having only 2 pickups over 2 weeks. I personally don't think that was unfair or not right. Again, we could have communicated it better and used it right for that to apply to the whole city. That's all we did. So I just want to point out that it was going to happen to Glenwood, Millville, and the Cove anyway because of where Christmas and New Year's fell, and we just expanded it to the whole city. And so I understand, but I'm like, so maybe, what I will say we did mess up, and the solid waste team admitted that, was with the claw truck. Typically with the claw truck, and this is a little bit in the weeds, but they will, whenever they miss a day or get behind or have a holiday, they don't stick to a consistent route like Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday for the blue cans. If they end up getting a day off for whatever reason, they come back to the same spot where they pick up and finish, so that everybody gets a claw truck pickup once a week. This time over the New Year's holiday, they did mess up, and that's already been rectified. There was a miscommunication issue between the foreman and the superintendent. So the claw truck, we absolutely dropped the ball on that, and we truly did get 2 weeks behind on that. So any bulk pickup item, but to Commissioner Granger's point, that is where a transfer station would have really helped, because if you live in Panama City, bring us all your stuff, no cost, and then we'll run it out.
I think we also need to keep in mind, while we are a monopoly, we are the cheapest trash service in the county, period.
Yep, I think the guys do a great job.
And they do a great job. We probably did miss the mark on communication on this one, but it's like $38 a month for trash or so, somewhere in there, and we pick up twice a week.
I don't think anybody in unincorporated Bay County gets that.
Back to skateboarding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back to skateboarding.
All right.
Okay.
10:10, thank you for coming today. It was super awesome. See you soon. Come back. Thank you.